Is the Taliban going woke? Well, I don't think they're going woke, but they certainly are talking woke. They've sort of assimilated, you might say, leftist woke vocabulary. I'm reading an article where this Taliban leader, is accused of excluding women from Afghan universities. And he goes, well, yeah, we do that. But he goes, that's because we are creating, quote, a safe Islamic environment for men. So let's think about it. We've got safe spaces throughout American universities where people can feel comfortable and, you may say, not be either tempted or harassed by things that could make them uncomfortable. Well, evidently the Taliban is taking this exact logic and saying, well, that applies to Islamic men. We don't want them getting excessively aroused or taunted or distracted from their Islamic duties, so we too are creating our own safe spaces. So this is not really the Taliban going woke. You might wonder, how can the most illiberal regime in the world go woke? Well, let's remember that the wokesters themselves are illiberal. So the Taliban, in that sense, is on the same side as the woke left in America. And I was trying to think to myself, what would it be like if you were to go to have a Taliban ministry of wokeness, in which all the policies of the Taliban, all its different practices, are defended in woke terms. So let's try it out. Censorship. Well, the Taliban practices censorship, but the woke left practices censorship. So censoring people who don't agree with you is in fact woke. It's Taliban woke and it's American woke. What about Taliban indoctrination in the schools, the madrasas that basically give you a straight line and you got to follow it? This is the Islamic way to think. There's no other way to think. Well, that's exactly the same as what's happening in American schools and universities. Harvard has become America's biggest madrasa. We have madrasa education, otherwise known as critical race theory, that is basically drummed into people. It's treated ultimately as gospel. It's got all the liturgical significance of religious indoctrination. What about the way that the Taliban treats gays? Well, cultural diversity. The Taliban, after all, drops buildings on gays, and you could argue, first of all, who are we to impose our values on them? They're a different society. They have a right to express their own culture. Plus, they're contributing to the diversity of the world. Think about it. Nobody else in the world drops buildings on gays. So the Taliban, by doing that, is pursuing a culturally unique and distinct path. What about mass executions? Well, that's basically an extreme form of censorship if you think about it. Execution is basically shutting you up, but for good. Right? So the Taliban can say, we're basically Facebook with a machete. We get a little carried away sometimes, but we are carrying things to their extreme conclusion. What about pedophilia? Because we know all about the Afghan, the bacha-bazi, the fooling around with the little boys. The Taliban can say, we're basically going Hollywood. We're basically following the pattern of the left of taking down all the guardrails and all the normal restraints. Same with polygamy. They'll say, we're basically attacking the nuclear family the same as the left. The left is attacking the nuclear family. Well, we're trying to replace the nuclear family. Except in our case, it's not kind of serial monogamy, kind of the way the left want. We have polygamy. We just go all the way. And in fact, we are even a little restrained about it. You can have wives, but no more than 4. That's, after all, the Islamic way. What about abuse of women? Hey, Taliban, don't you guys abuse women? The Taliban could say, wait a minute, women? We don't recognize women. We only recognize people with uteruses. And after all, men can have uteruses too. Men too can have children. So what's all this making these binary distinctions between male and female and accusing us based upon the very categories that you're using to accuse us are false? What about floggings and beatings that the Taliban likes to engage in? Well, they could say, you can find the same floggings in America. There's a lot of sadomasochism going on. Just go to the Folsom Street Fair. You'll see all kinds of people being publicly flogged, and many of them actually like it. They enjoy the flogging. So what's to say that the people being flogged in Kabul don't enjoy it? What makes one kind of flogging better than the other? And finally, cutting off of testicles, which is in fact something, well, this is a judicial punishment in radical Islam, and they can say, listen, we're just helping these men to transition. We're just helping them to become women. After all, once your testicles are chopped off, all you have to do is identify as a woman and thank the guy who did it for you. After all, it was done for free. You don't even have to pay a doctor. You don't have to go through the process. What I'm getting at here is, I think this is a way that the Taliban can endear itself to the Biden administration. The Biden administration is, they're a little embarrassed by what happened in Afghanistan. So the Taliban, and if it wants to get American diplomatic recognition, this is one way. They need to appoint a woke advisor. And no, I'm not going to do it. I'm simply throwing out a few suggestions that they might consider. But maybe if I grew a beard, I'd be eligible. They'd be like, yeah, Mullah Dinesh. You're now in charge of, you're now the woke advisor to the Taliban. Well, the problem is I've already given you the recipe, guys. All you need to do is put it into practice, and you're going to get a lot of applause from people like Jake Sullivan, from people like Anthony Blinken, and maybe even one-handed applause from the doddering Joe Biden.